Hi everyone, Danny here, and welcome to Spinelli Speaks and another Sunday night summary with Edward Rutherfurd's Sarum. We are, I believe, almost to the halfway point of our journey through Sarum. We've actually hit a new part of the book. We were previously reading the old Sarum, and now we are in the new Sarum with tonight's chapter 8, The Founding. Now, if you recall, we are only going to cover the first part of this chapter tonight, as the chapter is 125 pages long. So we are going to break this up into two parts. This part is going to cover the pages that are between like 375 and 445, if you're in the same section. If you happen to be looking at your pages, we are going to read up through the section that was like titled 1264. And then in my copy, and it may be similar to yours, the section that we stopped has this little marking right above the next paragraph. You don't see this really anywhere else in the chapter, so if you do not have the same copy as I do, you will see that little kind of illustration. Now, if you've missed any of the previous chapter summaries, feel free to jump into the description. I will always have the playlist there for you, so if you have to catch up on any of the previous chapters, feel free to jump into that. I also have my London series in there as well, if you're looking for any more Rutherfurd reads. Additionally, I hope you stick around, hit that subscribe button as well as the notification bell, and like and comment on this video. I love to chat about these books. There's always something to discuss, so I'd be excited to hear from you. But for all of us who are on this journey, just remember that we are doing these every Sunday night at 6 p.m. I know that I have had a few weeks off here and there, maybe due to holidays or some family things, but I am trying to stick to our Sunday night summaries each Sunday at 6 p.m. So I hope to see you there. Okay, Chapter 8, The Founding. This again is part of this new Sarum, and we find ourselves in 1244. Now, the section of the chapter that we're reading does cover a good 20-year span of time. So we're from 1244, which is about 100 years past the last chapter that we read, and it goes through to about 1264 in the first part of the chapter. I imagine in this chapter we're going to see much more time continue in the second part, so stay tuned for that next week. In this 20-year span of time, again from 1244 until about 1264, we see a whole lot of things happen as far as new things, or that new Sarum. So previously we know that it's very much like a farming settlement. They have livestock and produce, that kind of thing. We've seen feudal wars. We've seen a lot of other people from Europe come over. We've kind of created this melting pot. That does not end here. But New Salisbury, which is the land that we are looking at, where the five rivers meet, it is really becoming quite the city. Now we are seeing the building of actual merchant areas. We have homes being built and shops being built. And you have this kind of parallel of these buildings, of the settlement, of having all of like the commercial side and then the spiritual side. So this is the beginning where we see the building of the Salisbury Cathedral. And this is many, many years in the making. So in the span of time that we're looking at, that 20 years, it is still being built. There's cloisters being added, there's towers being added. So throughout the chapter, we get that glimpse of what it takes and who is a part of building this cathedral, which is built from stone. And much of the town is built from stone as well. So we have these different grouping of people. So we have our clergymen, we have our men of God, we have our merchants, our burgess class. We still have these knights, these men of honor who fight for the king or other causes. So there's a real like I said, melting pot of people, not only Englishmen, but Norman men. We have men from France. We have a lot of different people in this area, including a new group of people, the Jews, who are a huge support financially. So they are big lenders to a lot of the merchants in the area, as well as to the king. And we'll talk about that more specifically coming up. Speaking of the king, we are under the reign of King Henry III during this chapter, and he is known as the pious king, and he was quite a young king, and he is probably the reason why there were so many churches built, cathedrals. There was a lot of emphasis regarding like the Pope and the church and how it kind of meshed with the king and all that. We had in the previous generation, the Magna Carta was put together, and that was so that the king really couldn't just like do what he wants all the time. So we have a lot of rules and regulations in the mix of the kingdom, and so there's some hoops that they sometimes have to go through to get things that they want done. And this king specifically has a lot of taxation because he wants to do certain things. He wants to take certain lands, and he needs money to do that. And as I mentioned previously, with the addition of the Jewish population, who are very well known to be lenders, to lend money to not only merchants but to the king takes that as his like own little bank by taxing them, but not taxing them fairly. Basically, what ends up happening to this community during this time is they are subjected to very racist accusations of things that they have done, untrue things, and because of these things, the king decides, well, we're going to tax you. So it's very unfair, it's very unfounded, it's very racist, and it gets the king the money that he needs. And unfortunately for this Jewish population, they have nothing to fight that against. So they end up paying a lot in taxes so that the king can do what he wants. And in our fictional characters, we get this information through a character named Aaron, Aaron of Wilton, and he is a financier, and he helps two other characters with the financing of a mill that they want to start. And through his character, we kind of see the real definition of what the king is doing to the Jewish population during this time. So let's jump into those fictional characters. As we read the chapter, there are several of them, and we see that there's pretty much like a main three, and then the other ones are kind of like the outliers, and we see them from time to time. So the chapter opens with Canon Stephen Portahors, and he is part of that chronoline, that port line, and his brother is Alan Laportier. So you see they have two versions of that name, so Portahors and Portier. They are brothers, and like I said, Canon Stephen opens the chapter. He is a man of the church, and he is helping with overseeing the structural building of the city. So I believe at the time of the chapter opening, he's working on like waterways, stone waterways, and then he also oversees sending people to work on the cathedral. So he is currently in the opening scene with Osmond the Mason, Osmond Masoon, and he is a young boy of 13 who has ambitions of working with the cathedral. He wants to be a mason, as this guild is now is a very prominent guild, and there's a lot of things you have to do to even become a mason. So that's kind of where his dreams are, and he is a stoneworker, part of that Numa line. So we are seeing that ancestral line are just strong in craftsmanship in that stone making. So we see Osmond. And as I said or mentioned before, this chapter spans a time of 20 years. So we see him kind of grow. And he is an interesting character. I think when he's younger, you see that he is young and naive, but he has a lot of ambition. And then as he gets older, I'm nervous that his character goes off the rails a little bit, because I think as we stopped in our chapter, I think something is afoot that might not be so good. So anyways, that's his character. We also have William Atterbury, same name as generations past, so he's kept the name. This is a character from that Tep line. He, if you recall from the previous chapter, was always having a lot of issue with the Shockleys over land. Nothing has changed there. He still has a chip on his shoulder regarding the Shockley family, so he is kind of a nuisance in the chapter. He has a bone to pick with almost everyone, and we don't see a lot from him. There's not a lot of character development with this character, but we do see him getting up to a few naughty things within the chapter. We also have, as I mentioned, that Alan Laportier, and he is an alnager. That's the word for it. And he basically is a wool inspector. So at this time, one of the main things that England in this area is known for is their woolen cloth. So they're a big producer of woolen cloth. So they have these alnagers who inspect the wool to make sure that it's the correct weight, it's made correctly, so that there is a certain way in which it's made, so that you're not getting like cheaply made wool and then there's nice wool, and so that you're not charging your customer too much for crappy wool. And that's where William Atterbury, who has a farm, has sheep, tries to sell his wool, and he is very obviously not doing it properly. So yeah, like I said, he has a bone to pick with everyone. Then we have Jocelyn de Godefroy, which that's French. I hope I'm saying it right. I can listen to it all day long on the audiobook, and you'd think I could repeat it back, but 'tis neither here nor there. He is a landowner. He, if you recall from the previous chapter, his ancestor was also the lord of that area, and a knight, a noble knight from Normandy. So as the years have passed, even though it's been 100 years, we have a similarity here. This Jocelyn, he is also a knight of Avonsford, and he is the local lord of the area. And then he has a son, Hugh, who also becomes a knight. So we have that running in their family. Lastly, we have the Shockleys. As I have mentioned previously, we have Edward Shockley and then his son, Peter. Now, Edward, Peter, and Jocelyn are thinking about creating a mill on Jocelyn's land. And then the Shockleys would basically run the mill. So the Godefrays, de Godefrays, that's what it is, Jocelyn de Godfrey. Anyways, they are noble and they are knights, so they have a certain space above Shockleys, who are merchants. They're part of the burgess. So if you think about the hierarchy, like, the king, and then you have like the aristocracy, and it keeps going down, and you have then these merchants, and then villains are under them, and then basically slaves. When you build something like this mill on Jocelyn's land, he technically owns it. And even though he's going into business with the Shockleys, they really just work for him. So even though they're going into work together, it's on his land. So hypothetically, at any point in time, he could simply say, I don't want you anymore. I'm going to find other people to work this. So even though they're going into business together, it's really not that at all. But anyways, in order for them to get this mill, to build this mill and start producing the wool, so this is going to be for wool. So the mill is going to be used to do the very manual labor of, like, it's a very interesting process of how it was explained in the book, and I'm not going to be able to do it very succinctly here. But basically the mill is going to do the hardest part of, like, crushing the wool into a cloth, essentially. And mills use water, and so it's a big thing, and there's several other mills miles away that are doing the same thing. So that is how England has become this huge producer of woolen cloth, is because of this innovation of these mills for processing of wool. Anyways, very, very terrible way of explaining it. But in order to finance this, they talked to Aaron of Wilton, who is that Jewish man that I explained earlier, who lends them the money. Throughout the chapter, we hear his unfortunate journey through getting taxed and kind of how he's affected by that. But that's all his character really does, is one, helps finance their mill, but two, explain to us, the reader, what is happening to the Jewish population during this time frame. So with the addition of all of those characters, we really get a good idea of the time and space in New Salisbury. So essentially we have the erection of all of these buildings and the cathedral specifically. We have the kind of background noise of the king needing money and taxing those Jews. He's also doing a lot of trying to expand, but also trying to do it within the limits of this Magna Carta. We start to see more of, like, the parliamentary democracy happening, where there's people that are really trying to have more say in what the king is able to do. We also have, like, the role of women, as I often mention, is very much similar to every other chapter we've had. Alan de Portier's daughter, Alicia, she falls in love with Peter, and something kind of happens there, and then she's basically, like, sold. And not that she is against it, because obviously if you grow up in a time that you know your status, it's kind of like, well, this is just what happens. So there's, like, it's almost like it's just transactional, which we've seen in past chapters. So all of marriages are extremely transactional, and it's usually how it can benefit the family moving forward. Can it progress us in society? Can it put us higher in society? Is there a good dowry? That kind of stuff. So it's all very transactional. Beside that, because this is just the first part of the chapter, there are no true conclusions yet as far as any of these things that have happened, but it is a very strong start to a chapter. I have been finding myself getting lost in all of the explanations of the cathedral, all of the stonework information, all of the statues that they built. I would love to maybe check in and see what is remaining of the Salisbury Cathedral. I'm assuming quite a bit. But yeah, so a lot of characters to follow, but not a lot of action that you would get lost in it. We have Osmond, who obviously is very immersed in the cathedral. We have the Shockleys and the de Godfreys, who are very invested in the mill, but we don't get too much information about that. It's kind of everyone's going along their own lives. And of course, we always have William Attenborough on the sidelines doing something silly. So good start to the chapter. I hope that you've all been able to follow along okay. Now, getting into next week, we will finish the chapter with part 2 of the founding, and then we'll just continue on our merry trek. I don't think after this chapter there are any more ginormous chapters like this, so I think we'll be able to kind of go along our way as per usual. But until then, I hope you are reading something fantastic. Maybe you're just getting in to our Sarum. If you need to get any catch-up time in, we do have the full playlist in the description. Otherwise, I'll see you next week, Sunday. I hope you all are taking care, staying safe, and until then, you know how it goes. Happy reading. Bye.